Tonight, you'll probably eat dinner around 6 or 7. Tomorrow morning, you'll eat breakfast around 7 or 8. This feels ancient. It feels biological. It is neither. For most of human history, there was no such thing as breakfast. There was no such thing as 3 meals a day. There was just food when you could get it, and hunger when you couldn't. The real answer is far stranger than a bowl of cereal. Let's start with your body. Right now, somewhere inside your gut, a small army of hormones is waiting for a signal. Ghrelin rises, your stomach growls. You feel hungry, and you assume this is your ancient ancestors talking to you through deep time. They are not. Ghrelin doesn't know what time it is. It only knows what you've trained it to expect. Eat at 7 every morning for a month, and your gut will start screaming for food at 7, whether or not you actually need it. Hunger, it turns out, is less a biological alarm and more a learned habit wearing a biological costume. So when did the habit start? Anthropologists who study modern hunter-gatherer societies, groups like the Hadza of Tanzania, give us the closest living window into pre-agricultural eating. Researcher Alyssa Crittenden, who has spent years studying Hadza food patterns, found something that should wreck your mental image of cavemen. The Hadza don't eat 3 meals. They don't eat at fixed times at all. They eat in bursts, scattered across the day, driven entirely by what they find and when they find it. Breakfast, in the sense of a dedicated first meal, simply doesn't exist in their world. Food is opportunity, not schedule. Now rewind further to actual Paleolithic humans, the ones we picture hunting mammoths in fur. Here's the uncomfortable truth. There was no fridge. There was no pantry. There was no guarantee. A successful hunt might feed a group for days. A failed one might mean nothing for 2. Early humans were, biologically speaking, feast or famine machines. Their bodies evolved to gorge when food appeared and conserve when it didn't. That's not a flaw. That's the whole design. Your ancestors weren't eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They were eating whenever the universe said yes. This is where it gets interesting, because your body still remembers this design, even though your life no longer matches it. You've probably felt it. That moment at 3 p.m. when you're suddenly ravenous, even though you just ate at noon. That's not weakness. That's 4 million years of feast or famine programming colliding with a vending machine on the second floor. Your body is still bracing for scarcity that for most people will never actually come. So how did 3 fixed meals a day even start? Food historian Abigail Carroll, who wrote extensively on the history of American eating habits, traces the rigid 3-meal structure not to ancient instinct but to the rise of industrial labor. Once humans started working factory shifts on fixed clocks, eating had to fit around the clock too. Breakfast became fuel before the shift. Lunch became a break carved out of the shift. Dinner became the reward after the shift. None of this was about hunger. It was about scheduling a population, the same way you'd schedule machines. Here's the part nobody puts on a cereal box. Breakfast, as the most important meal of the day, wasn't handed down from your ancestors. It was handed down from advertising. In the early 20th century, cereal companies, yes, the same ones whose mascots are currently smiling at children from a grocery aisle, funded research and marketing campaigns specifically designed to convince Americans that skipping breakfast was dangerous. It worked spectacularly. An entire nation rearranged its biology around a marketing department's quarterly targets. If you've ever felt guilty for skipping breakfast, you weren't listening to your body. You were listening to a 1950s ad executive who is, conveniently, no longer around to be held accountable. Let's go back even further because the story gets stranger. Religious authorities of the time treated eating first thing in the morning as a symptom of gluttony, a vice reserved for the weak-willed and the lazy. Peasants who worked physical labor got a pass. Everyone else was expected to wait. So, for a long stretch of European history, eating breakfast wasn't a health habit. It was a confession that you lacked self-control. Imagine explaining that to a man currently inhaling a breakfast burrito in his car at a red light. So if breakfast isn't ancient instinct and it isn't moral failure, and it isn't even really about hunger, what is it? It's infrastructure. It's a side effect of clocks, shifts, and cereal commercials, dressed up afterward as biology so it would feel permanent. And once something feels permanent, nobody questions it. You don't ask why you eat breakfast any more than you ask why red means stop. It's just there. It was always there, except it wasn't. This pattern, taking something completely manufactured and convincing an entire population it's natural and ancient, isn't unique to breakfast. Psychologist Solomon Asch demonstrated decades ago in his famous conformity experiments just how easily people will override their own senses to match a routine everyone around them seems to be following. Nobody hands you a rule book for eating 3 meals a day. You absorb it the same way Asch's subjects absorbed wrong answers, not because it's true, but because everyone else appears to be doing it without question. Let's talk about what actually happened to your body during this transition. Because it's more dramatic than a simple habits changed story. For roughly 200,000 years, the human metabolic system evolved under conditions of unpredictable scarcity. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham, known for his research into how cooking shaped human evolution, has argued that the controlled, frequent access to cooked, calorie-dense food was itself a major evolutionary turning point. But even that shift didn't introduce a clock. It introduced more reliable food, not scheduled food. Your ancestors went from sometimes there's a carcass to there's usually something cooking. The clock came much, much later, and biologically speaking, much faster than evolution can adapt to. This mismatch matters more than it sounds. Your metabolism, your hormone cycles, even your mood regulation evolved to operate on a feedback loop of genuine scarcity and genuine abundance. What you have now is neither. You have guaranteed abundance, scheduled to mimic scarcity. 3 meals a day isn't your body's natural rhythm reasserting itself. It's a rhythm imposed from outside, one your body has simply learned to anticipate, the same way a dog learns to salivate at a bell. Ivan Pavlov never met a vending machine, but he would have recognized exactly what's happening every time your stomach growls at 11:58 before a noon lunch break. So why did this conditioning take hold so completely, so fast, across an entire species? Because humans are remarkably good at converting recent convenience into ancient instinct. Give a population guaranteed food access for a few generations, wrap it in a story about health or virtue, and it stops looking like a choice. It starts looking like nature. This is frankly how a tremendous amount of common sense gets manufactured. Somebody benefits from you believing something is natural, and if they say it confidently enough for long enough, nobody bothers fact-checking your stomach. Consider for a moment just how aggressively breakfast was marketed once cereal companies realized there was money in mornings, convincing an already well-fed population that they needed manufactured grain in a box every single morning, without which their day would supposedly collapse, ranks among the more impressive feats of 20th century persuasion. It didn't rely on lying exactly, it relied on repetition. Say, most important meal of the day enough times. In enough magazines, on enough cartoon boxes aimed directly at children too young to question advertising, and within a generation, it stops sounding like a slogan. It sounds like science. Even now, you can probably recall the phrase instantly, word for word, without remembering who told it to you first. Meanwhile, across the rest of human history and across most of the planet, the picture looks nothing like the American breakfast table. In many traditional societies, what counts as a first meal varies wildly, sometimes leftovers from the night before, sometimes nothing until midday, sometimes a small bite eaten on the move while already working. There was rarely a dedicated breakfast food. People simply ate what existed when it existed. The entire concept of breakfast-specific cuisine, foods considered appropriate only for mornings and somehow wrong at any other hour, is a relatively recent invention and one that doesn't hold up well outside the cultures that invented it. Ask yourself honestly why a bowl of sugared grain is morning food, but the exact same sugar in a cookie is suddenly dessert.